Hi there, welcome back. Welcome back to the Telefunken. It's been a couple of weeks since I was able to play with this. Life got in the way. But we're back to it. And as you may recall from the last video, we'd done the full AM stuff, and the FM was still giving us nothing. There was one other problem, which I didn't address in the last video, and some of you may have noticed, the hum. The hum was better, but it was not perfect. And there was a strange phenomenon when I sort of bent that tube on the top side, the hum would reduce. So I have been racking my brains trying to find out why this thing was humming, and it was not a filter capacitor issue. I checked, the B+ was relatively filter free, but we were still getting that hum, and the hum was coming through even without a signal on. In other words, even when the volume control was set to 0. Well, if the hum is volume dependent, then you know it's sort of happening after or before the volume control. And if it's not volume dependent, then even if you got the volume on 0, you still have the hum, then you know the problem is actually beyond that. And this was the case. It got worse, slightly worse with the volume, but even with the volume down, there was hum. So I got thinking, well, ground loops, must be a ground loop. And that would make sense because this thing has got, the filter capacitors are here on the right-hand side where you see the pointer stick. Filter caps are there. And so all the B+ is going all the way across there. Now, the B+ is not so much the issue, it's actually the AC windings that worried me more. And the AC windings for the heaters, 6.3 volt heaters, are pure AC. One of these connections is connected to ground. Sorry, that's not it, it's going down there. One is connected to the chassis. So all the heaters have one end connected to the chassis, and the other one is the 6.3 that hops around to all the tubes. That can usually be the cause of hum, if that heater is going past, or if that heater wire is going past some sensitive circuitry. So I tried to move heater wires, I tried to do a little bit of lead dress on here, still couldn't figure out what was going on, the hum was still there, nothing changed. I tried moving stuff around with the stick very carefully because you've got high voltages, still nothing there. So then I tried something else. I went and looked at grounds. And I want to show you something. I've got the scope connected to this ground point on the ABC80. So the center, that center tube is supposed to be grounded. It's connected to a ground lug down here, which is sort of sticking out of the tube socket. And I'm going to show you on the scope. I've got the scope connected between that point and the chassis ground, and I want to show you what we have on the scope. It's interesting. That is what we're seeing between actual ground on the chassis and a point which is supposed to be ground. There's 170 millivolts RMS on there, and it's actually getting worse. 200 millivolts RMS, and I think you can hear the hum. Yep, you can definitely hear the hum. So that ground is not ground. And I'm actually wondering whether it's connected to ground at all. But I'll show you how we get rid of that. We've got the scope off now. We don't need it. But what I've got here is I'm just going to connect this to the chassis. The closer to the filter caps, the better. The closer it is to the ground on the filter capacitor, the better. But it doesn't have to be on the filter capacitor. I'll just connect it on here. And now with this, I'm going to touch that point that's supposed to be ground anyway. And listen to this. And there's another point down here that's supposed to be ground as well. See that? Now if I take this and actually connect it to the ground of the filter cap, that should even be better. Let me try that. Whoops. So that ground there is not working. It's supposed to be ground because it's part of the actual tube socket, but for some reason it's not actually making a good contact to the chassis. Now I've got two choices. I've got to find a point here that's actually on the chassis, another ground point, and just rewire that, or just put a wire to ground there. Now that ground is actually used as quite a few grounds. It's used as part of the ground for a shield in the signal line leaving the anode. It's an important ground point, and it's not making connection to ground. In fact, I want to see what that actually measures at. What resistance do we have to ground from that point? Now remember, it should be 0. It's not much. It's 1.2 ohms. But that 1.2 ohms is doing all that damage. For some reason, that thing is not making a good ground. So I think the ground problem, or the hum problem, is solved. Brilliant. Let me do that and get back to you again. It's done. I passed a wire. It's a black wire from the ground over there, around as close to the bottom as I could, to the center of that tube, which is acting as a common ground for that tube socket. And our problem is solved. Brilliant. What else have I done? This resistor was measuring fine, but it had been replaced and it was nowhere near the original. So I replaced that one. It was a pretty crappy carbon one. I've replaced that capacitor there, which is the FM detector capacitor. That's been replaced as well. It was a 2 microfarad. It was reading about 8. So I've got a 2.2 in there. And it's basically done. But what about the FM? We had no FM, right? What have we got now? So what do we have now? Let's have a look. Whoops, music. Hear that? That is FM. This, and you should see that magic eye, it's coming through beautifully. Our FM is back. And what it was, what it is this guy. It's the switch, but it's a strange one, because I've actually tried to dismantle part of it and I still haven't been able to absolutely fix it. Now it works. No, it doesn't. So we've still got a problem with the FM switch there, the piano key. And I have cleaned this, I don't know how many times. I've tried to get in there. I've got to work on this some more, but basically that's what's wrong with it. Is this switch is not making the connection properly. It's something I should have looked at right at the beginning, but it wasn't a question of difficulty. It was just that when I found it had no FM, I decided to focus on the other priorities, get the AM, get the audio done, had this hassle of this hum that was bugging me all the time. It's just completely gone. Completely gone. There's no hum at all. And it was bugging me and bugging me. So the first opportunity I got to look at that, I got back and I started looking for the hum. And by chance, I happened to, look how sensitive it is. I happened to touch that and it came back. So we've got a problem with that switch, and I'm just hoping it's a cleaning issue. But if it is, it's being pretty stubborn. But this is what I'm going to do next. I'm going to resolve this problem, because I do prefer music to silence. This reception seems to be pretty good. But what I want to do is I want to extend the dial to 101.6. It's actually receiving up to about 101 megahertz. And there's my favorite station at 101.6, as I mentioned before. So I'm going to try and stretch the dial a bit, and that's done in the RF alignment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this one short. I'm going to tackle that however long it takes. And on the next video, I'll show you the result of that, and I'll also do the alignment and probably be ready to show you the work on the restoration of the actual cabinet, which is just basically cleaning. If there's anything interesting, I'll mention that as well. But for now, I'm happy that we've got FM. Now, you do have to stand there with your finger, but at least it's nothing wrong with that guy. That's the one that was scaring me. So I'm going to say goodbye for now. Thanks for watching. And if you've enjoyed that, please click like, share, subscribe, and all that jazz. And if you want to support the channel directly, you can do so on Patreon. Thanks for watching. Bye for now and stay safe.